For 40 years, Durin's folk have dwelt in the reclaimed Erebor. The dragon Smaug is long dead, and the dwarves have prospered. Yet there is a disquiet among them, a longing in one dwarf in particular to return to their great ancestral home, to reclaim Khazad-dum. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover Balin's expedition to Moria. Some years after their reclamation of Erebor, a shadow of disquiet falls upon Durin's folk. The dwarves begin to whisper among themselves that they are hemmed in a narrow place, living in the lonely mountain, and that greater wealth and splendor would be found in a wider world. Eventually, some would speak of Moria, saying that perhaps now they had the power and numbers to return to their once great ancestral home. This background is given to us by Gimli's father, Gloin, at the Council of Elrond, and it gives us the first steps towards Balin taking on this fateful quest. But what is perhaps most chilling of all is Gloin's admission that they did not perceive where this shadow of disquiet came from. At last, Balin listens to the whispers and resolves to return to Khazad-dum. For his part, King Dain Ironfoot does not willingly give them leave to go on this venture, no doubt believing it a fool's errand. Still, Balin is resolute, and along with Ori, Owen, and many dwarves, he leaves Erebor in 2989. Now, many fans have asked, why were these dwarves not content with their home in Erebor? Why take such a risk? One answer is the importance of Khazad-dum to their people. The realm itself was founded by Durin I, the great father of their kind and first dwarf to ever walk the Misty Mountains. It was their home for well over 9,000 years, before they were driven out by the Balrog. Not only was it vastly important, but we can only guess what knowledge may have been lost in the fall of Khazad-dum. Gloin himself indicates dwarven secrets were lost even in the fall of Erebor, which was inhabited for a much shorter time.
"We have done well," he said, "but in metalwork we cannot rival our fathers, many of whose secrets are lost. We make good armor and keen swords, but we cannot again make mail or blade to match those that were made before the dragon came. Only in mining and building have we surpassed the old days."
There are also old treasures long lost. Balin hoped to find the Ring of Thror, the ring of power that once belonged to Durin himself. There was also Durin's axe, not to mention one of the greatest metals in all Middle-earth, mithril. Whether motivated by honor, pride, profit, or all the above, Balin's expedition comes to the Dimril Dale. That very day, they would fight their first battle against the orcs of the Misty Mountains. They kill many orcs in the Dale. Floy, one of the dwarves in the company, kills an orc chieftain, though he would be killed by an arrow soon after. This battle takes place in the very location where the dwarves won their war against the orcs 190 years earlier. Balin also took part in that earlier battle, though he was just 36 years old at the time. We're never told whether this was a consideration for Balin taking on this expedition, but being present when the dwarves could have pressed their advantage and pushed further into Moria may have weighed on him. We don't know whether Dain Ironfoot, who caught a glimpse of Durin's bane, and thus decided they should not proceed, shared that information with all. Returning to this later clash, Balin and the dwarves are once again victorious, ultimately driving the orcs from the Great Gate and the guard room. Floy would be buried under the grass near the Miromir, the revered lake where Durin saw a crown of 7 stars above his head. Balin would lead his people on their continued march through Moria, continuing through the eastern parts of the city, securing them from orc control. They would take the 21st Hall in which to dwell. While nowhere near the entirety of the Great Dwarven Realm, this is a sizable enough area to set up their settlement. Balin sets his seat in the chamber of Mazarbul and is named Lord of Moria. It's worth noting that while Khazad-dum was traditionally a kingdom, Dain was the rightful king of Durin's folk, and this small colony would be but a branch of his greater kingdom. Thus, 1,008 years after it was lost to the Balrog, the colony of Moria is established, and a group of dwarves could call Khazad-dum home once more. For the next 5 years, the colony of Moria would thrive. They send messengers to Erebor, telling of their success. They would reclaim and discover many old treasures, including gold, a noteworthy helm, and Durin's axe. This heirloom of the dwarves was lost when Khazad-dum was abandoned in 1981 of the Third Age. But most precious of all was their finding of true silver, also known as mithril. Finding this greatest of metals once more, the dwarves could no doubt see a return to glory for their homeland. However, the colony of Moria would not be allowed to prosper for long. While they would not come face to face with the Balrog, there were plenty more foul things that sought their destruction. On November 10th, 2994, Balin journeys east out of Moria, desiring to look in the Mirror. However, there was an orc archer hiding behind a stone. The orc shoots Balin, killing the Lord of Moria. The other dwarves slay Balin's killer, but soon they discover this was no lone orc. Many more come pouring from the Silverlode. Taking Balin's body, the dwarves initially fend off the orcs, retreating to the first hall and barring the east gate. However, the orcs would burst through and take the first hall. This leaves the dwarves with their last, best defensible position in the second hall just across the bridge of Khazad-dum. The bridge itself is made as a defensive structure, purposely narrow so an invading army would have to cross single file. Despite this strong defensive position, the orcs would take the bridge and battle would flow into the second hall. This no doubt shows us just how overwhelming the sheer numbers of the orcs were in this assault. The next detail we are given is that Loni, Nali, and Frar are said to have died bravely as the rest of the dwarves escaped to the 7th level. With the orcs having taken the halls and exit to the east, Owen leads a group of dwarves west, traveling all the way to the doors of Durin. They open the doors, which can be done from the inside without the password, but find that the water is up to the very wall. At this moment, they are attacked. The Watcher in the water waylays the group of dwarves, killing Owen. The 4 survivors of this attack retreat to the chamber of Mazarbul, bringing word to Ori and the others. Ori documents this grave news in the Book of Mazarbul, Balin's death, the orc invasion, and Owen's encounter with the Watcher. At this point, escape is impossible. They cannot retreat either east or west. They lay their lord to rest, and Balin's throne room would now become his tomb, and a tomb for them all. Eventually, the orcs would find the chamber where the dwarves made their defense. As Ori records his final words in a rush, "We cannot get out. The end comes. Drums, drums in the deep. They are coming." There would be no survivors of Balin's company, no messengers to Dain, and no one to record what transpired. For 25 years, the fate of Balin and his company would remain a mystery to the dwarves of Erebor. Only when the Fellowship of the Ring comes to the Chamber of Mazarbul on January 15, 3019, would the truth be discovered. They find the evidence of a massacre, as Ori and his kinsmen made their final stand, their bodies left desecrated, and their treasures plundered by the orcs. The axe of Durin and their other prizes are nowhere to be seen. After reading from the Book of Mazarbul, Gandalf gives it to Gimli, so that it might one day come to King Dain. A grievous text, but one important to their people. The Fellowship, of course, would have to fight their own way out of this very chamber. And after Gandalf's fateful encounter with the Balrog, and the rest of the Fellowship's escape, Gimli would at last come to the Mirror. Knowing their time is brief, for the orcs will pursue them at nightfall, Aragorn tells Gimli to be swift. Gimli, Frodo, and Sam make their way to the lake, standing beside a cracked and weather-worn stone. The Stone of Durin, which marked the spot Durin the first looked into the waters. They stooped over the dark water. At first they could see nothing. Then slowly they saw the forms of the encircling mountains mirrored in a profound blue, and the peaks were like plumes of white flame above them. Beyond there was a space of sky. There, like jewels sunk in the deep, shone glinting stars, though sunlight was in the sky above. Of their own stooping forms, no shadow could be seen.
"O Kheled-Zaram, fair and wonderful," said Gimli. "There lies the crown of Durin till he wakes. Farewell."
He bowed and turned away, and hastened back up the greensward to the road again. Thus Gimli gazes upon that holy site of the dwarves, the very spot where his third cousin Balin was slain, the beauty of Durin's crown of stars, which no evil could destroy, giving hope that while the colony of Moria was no more, the mighty kingdom of Khazad-dum may one day rise again. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.